Welcome into Cyhawk-Gameday. I'm Reina Garcia, joined by Jeff Woody. Well, Jeff, we're almost done. This is our second to last episode of the season. But before we kind of talk about that, I want to get into, it was announced earlier this week that the Cyhawk Series game will continue through 2027. Now, we were talking a little bit earlier. This is a good thing, I think, for the state of Iowa in general. Yeah,
it's great news just because it's one of the very, very, very few, it may be, maybe one or two, where you have two Power 5 conference teams in opposite conferences in state. So that dynamic is pretty rare, and so it's usually a good win for both teams, at least now that Coach Campbell's been here, that Iowa State's kind of come back up a little bit. So usually it's a good win or not a bad loss, rivalry game, and it kind of pulls the fringe fans in that are like, well, my cousin went to Iowa, so I'll root for them or whatever, stuff like that. So I think it's a really good thing for the state.
Yeah, it's definitely it was a fun experience getting to experience that for the first time for me this year. Well, let's talk about the Hawkeyes a little bit. They were trying to get to 3 straight wins when they were taking on Wisconsin for that Heartland Trophy. Now, the Badgers up 3-0, but they had to punt. Deontay Craig gets his hand on the ball, and then Jay Higgins scoops it up as the Iowa special teams gets the offense some pretty favorable field position. A second quarter, Caleb Johnson gets the carry, glides his way into the end zone for the first touchdown of the game, and Iowa jumps in front 7-3. Second quarter, that bad man Cooper DeJean was at it again. He picks this one off, takes it all the way back to the crib for a pick 6. It's now 14-3 Iowa. Later in the fourth, Spencer Petras finds the end zone on the QB sneak. He gets in, and the Hawkeyes extend the lead to 11, and Iowa wins 24-10.
Well, we talked about November football, and to me it was a classic example of November football in our conference. Tough conditions weather-wise. And, a couple of things we really thought coming into the game we'd have to, play tough because Wisconsin's a really tough outfit. And then playing clean football is, huge for us.
Well, Jeff, for another week in a row, the Iowa offense has done their part to win the game. Can we consider this a trend now?
Yeah, we can consider it a trend, but again, let's caution this for a second, is they still, I believe, they had under 200 yards of total offense. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the offense was helping. They just weren't hurting. So when they got a short field, they took advantage of it. When they needed to hold the ball, they for the most part did. So the offense is doing enough, and they are more competent. I think having Deontay Vines back is huge because he gives them a threat down the field, which teams actually reasonably have to respect at this point. So then you get Caleb Johnson to be able to run underneath, and you have a semblance of an offense. Now, the weather is going to play a factor in the fact this is going to be a slugfest today with Minnesota, but they're going to need some kind of offense because Ibrahim, regardless of how good Iowa's defense is, that's a dog of a running back, and so they're going to get there. So the offense has to continue being not bad. They just have to continue being average, and if they're average, they should probably walk out with a win.
Yeah, I mean, considering how just abysmal the first half of the season was for the offense, I mean, you got to tip your cap to them. I mean, to continue fighting, I mean, they could have easily folded, but now here they are in the driver's seat for the Big Ten West. I mean, how much do you think that, just that internal drive has really contributed to their turnaround?
It's impressive, especially because, I mean, how much trash did Spencer Petras take? We talked about it, and I don't mean that in a bad way of saying like, oh, talking smack, as in literally, you were bad. People were saying how bad it was and managed to stay on your feet and kind of bounce back to this. And again, are we talking about like the 2000 Rams? We're not. We're not talking about that. But they've been able to take themselves from awful to respectable, and with how good that defense is and how good the special teams are, that's all they've needed to get these past few wins. And again, if Illinois loses to Michigan today, they are all the way in to Indianapolis if they take care of business. Yeah.